Okay, so we're back to finish sculpting our human. And, well, maybe not finish, but we're going to move on to the foot. So we just did the lower leg and got into the ankles. And now we're going to finish up with the foot. I'm going to kind of block this stuff out and talk through that, and then probably switch into just sculpting mode and maybe speed up the video playback by a factor of 2. So I'll talk a little bit and then move on. Enough talking for now. Here we go. What I'm going to want to do first is start to think about the primary shapes of the foot, in which we've got this large, almost conical shape that makes up the top of the foot here. And it kind of folds from back and outside to up and over and around, so kind of like that, and then flattens out as it hits the toes. Okay, we also want our arch of the foot in there, curving underneath. Okay, in the back we've got our Achilles tendon, and then our heel. Right here is basically 1 part bone and 1 part fat pad at the bottom, which creates sort of a donut shape just below the bone. And what we're going to see with that is 1 bump and then 2 bumps. 1 for the bone and then 1 for the fat pad. So I can switch to a bottom view and then go ahead and sort of tweak the footprint, if you will, of this human figure. I'm going to add a little bit of depth to the heel here, checking that my ankle has the proper angle to it, proper ankle angle, where it's higher on the inside and lower on the outside. Okay, I'll switch to my clay buildup, take a look at this a little bit more. I'm going to get sort of a rolling form here on the top of the foot. And then we've got these muscles that come, the extensor muscles, I believe, that come down from the lower leg into the top of the foot and then help to extend the toes. Okay, and you can be pretty heavy-handed here where you're carving out that Achilles tendon. If you're ever in doubt, just look at your own foot. That'll at least give you an indication of the basic forms of a human foot. Okay. So notice that we don't have the shin going right into the top of the foot. There's a little bit of an angle in between, so it goes down towards the ground and then angles in, and then the top of the foot is another angle altogether. So we have sort of that nice transition there that we're looking for. I'm actually going to raise this bone up just a bit because I think it's feels like it's sitting a little low, maybe a little too far forward as well. Okay. Take my clay build-up brush again. Now on the top of the foot, top outside of the foot, we've got the little bulge here created by the extensor digitorum brevis muscle. Okay, now let's take a look at these toes and get these situated. I'm going to first just kind of clean up the tops a little bit so that we are not looking at such a complete mess. This is obviously kind of a problem, so we'll have to deal with that. I'm going to isolate my feet here. Okay. So I'm going to start by tackling the big toe first, and go ahead and sculpt in that first sort of knuckle. And just like the hand, we've got sort of an arc going back for the toes. Okay, so we've got the knuckle, and then down to the next knuckle, like this. And I can mask off the toe and sort of shape that with my move tool to create the wedge shape that it is. Very important to be using reference as you're doing this. Carve in sort of a plane for the toenail, and then switch back to my move brush. Do a little reshaping. Oh. I'm actually going to pull that webbing back a little bit so that we've got some more space. And you know, it might be easier just to sort of extend the toe. Like that. If we're feeling like the foot's getting too long at any point, we can always just pull the entire toe region back. Probably drop my subdivision levels down a little bit, and then just nudge it back a little bit. Okay, let's see here. Pretty good. I'm going to move on, and want to be keeping in mind the different characteristics of each toe. Generally, they have sort of an arcing shape inwards, so they sweep in a little bit and start to point towards the pinky toe points kind of inwards, and then less so as you get closer to the big toe, which can sometimes even start pointing in the other way. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and just kind of rework the gesture of these toes before I do too much sculpting. Switch to my rotate tool, move tool. I generally toggle back and forth between move and transpose when I'm doing stuff like this. Okay, here again, we're going to be fighting the topology a little bit. Since we went ahead and kind of took the time to block in the geometry kind of carefully, I'd like to, or rather block in the topology, I'd like to try and keep this somewhat respectable topology so that it makes our lives a little bit easier when we have to go back in and deal with final topology for the asset for production. Okay, so I generally don't like to deal with topology at all. In fact, it's pretty much the bane of my existence, but well, that's not true. Sometimes it can be fun. But here, I'm going to spend a little bit of time, just as you could see, reshaping this toe based on the topology that was already implied. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the pinky toe. In fact, what I can do with this is take my transpose tool like this and just rotate the whole thing out like that. I'm not sure what happened there. Did I do that? Maybe I did. Okay, well, no big deal. We can fix that. Okay, what I'm going to do is just smooth it out. If you're starting to lose volume like this, rather than taking your move tool and pulling back and forth and maybe shearing your geometry or stretching it, turning your toe into a piece of taffy, what you can do is take your inflate tool and just sort of knock it around like that, build up a little bit of volume. Okay. Now we've got a little bit more volume to work with, so we're not going to be struggling quite so much to pull it around. Pretty neat. Nifty little trick. All right. I'm going to pull this toe down a little bit. Take a look at my toes here. Okay, this one. Needs to be in a little bit more. Something like that. I feel like they could all use just a little bit of adjusting still. Sometimes if my eyes are playing tricks on me, I'll just switch to the other foot and see if I get a better read from the other side. Something's feeling kind of weird here. I'm trying to put my finger on what it is exactly. Maybe I really need to start curling these toes in a little bit. It's starting to feel better. I think this is part of it too, is the length of the toes are a little off right now. Oops. Size. So what I did there was actually really important. Let me undo that. Oops. I have been snapping my top view and orienting the toes as if I want them to be on a foot that's facing straight forward, or in this case, down on the screen. But if I look at my sculpted foot, you can see that the feet are actually angled outward a little bit, right? They're slightly duck-footed and just a little bit more natural of a pose, which means I don't want my feet, or rather my toes, to be built on a foot that's angled straight forward and back. I want them to be oriented based on a foot that is rotated out just a little bit. Okay, so let me do that again. There we go, something like that. Okay, well, let's start going in and making these feel a little bit more like toes. I'm going to carve out a little bit more from the top of the foot here. Heel's feeling a little big. All right. So for each toe, we're going to want sort of a top shelf, right, where the muscle comes in, and then a middle section, and then the toenail, which is going to sort of angle forward like that. Okay, so we've got the top, then the middle, which I'm just going to leave, and then the toenail. And at first, you can just go ahead and block this in like this, like I'm doing here. And we can worry about sort of fine-tuning it in a minute. pinky toe is kind of a funny little nub of a toe, so you might want to treat that one just a little bit differently. Again, I'm keeping an eye on my topology here, just to make myself, my life a little bit easier down the road. Okay, now I'm going to give a quick little treatment to the undersides of the toes. Take my clay brush, carve that out. Again, masking by topology by holding Control and dragging the transpose action line along the edge loops. Alright, starting to feel pretty much like a foot. I'll take my standard brush and then go and sort of hint at those extensor muscles that flow into the toes. We can sort of refine that stuff later as well. Okay, so from here on out I'm just going to keep refining and sculpting the feet, and that's that.